And I guess I'll hit record and we can start, Amanda. I don't know if you've heard from Linda, but
yeah, but I'm sure she'll respond eventually.
Yeah, so we'll launch into it. So let me go ahead and share my amazing keynote presentation. And that's right when the music would have cued in, like the Tony Robbins, like, oh, no, it's too, okay. So we're in week 5 of facilitator training, story arc and activity creation. And our agenda, as our usual 3 points, will be to check in, then to our content, and then together we're going to ask you to begin at least creating an activity. And we're going to walk you through that, the steps of that, how to do that, and also have you introduce this new activity to us here as practice, as facilitator practice.
That's right. So I agree, Jeff, that this is some of the really more advanced training, and that activity creation. I mean, just looking at those words right now on the screen fresh this morning is like, wow, we're actually like not just running someone else's activity or delivering content or, you know, teaching something we already know. Like, this is the ability to create and formulate, like sculpt your own activity, whatever experience you want to create for your people.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
This is huge. Cynthia gave me awesome feedback about Wednesday, and Amanda had an amazing activity this week on Tuesday as well, in Fort Collins and Loveland respectively. And like, these are all the tenets of how we create those activities. So it's going to be fun to jump into this. So let's go ahead and check in. I love this picture where she has her coffee and the no BS zone. So again, it's a little bit early. I was mentioning that to Amanda too. It's like, funny, like not a lot of things start at 8 a.m. I'm happy to jump in and do this. It just takes us a few minutes to get rolling. So, you know, I've shared with Cynthia before the question of like, hi, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. Good. I'm fine. So we're looking for something deeper than that, right? Obviously. So share with us, have you had an opportunity to facilitate over the past 2 weeks? What has come up for you? And how are you feeling when we say, okay, we're going to create an activity today. This is an activity that you are going to facilitate in front of an audience, whether it's, 5 people or 50 people or 5 million people. This is something that you're going to facilitate. So what comes up for you when we talk about this? And go ahead and check in with us this morning. So who wants to go first? I think, Amber, you muted yourself, right? So you can control that. Otherwise, yep, she just unmuted. So who wants to go first? Ready to jump in? Go ahead.
I will.
Okay, Vicki?
When it comes to leading an activity and having content creation, I feel like when I grow up, I want to be just like Jeff and Amanda. We really have had last week and this week, really phenomenal activities, really, really good. I'm just so impressed. I'm excited. That's our focus today. So I think, how do you guys come up with this stuff? It's so awesome.
Awesome.
Cool.
And how are you feeling, Vicki, just about your facilitation skills? I know you've been hosting a lot and stepping right up there. So how's that feeling?
Great. And, every time that I host CBC, I learn another little thing that I think is really positive. And yesterday, after the meeting, I thought, I should have said this, but I'll use it next time.
Nice.
I thought of a way at the end to tie back to the beginning and bring back in the 3 pillars of CBC. So I thought it would have been perfect had I just said, thank you all for being really vulnerable, really authentic. That was so great to see a piece of your authentic self. So take that with you in the world as you are practicing bothness in your business, serving your clients and creating profit for you. And serving, this is your gift, this is how you serve the world in that oneness. So
you're making my heart go pitter pitter patter, because I feel like that is a facilitator instinct that's like coming alive, is wrapping the group up and putting words to the feeling that's in the room, and all those are like such great container facilitator instincts. So I wanted to reflect that to you.
Oh, great. Thanks.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Plus, I think it's just a really nice summary instead of, gosh, that was awesome. See ya.
Cool. Thank you. Awesome.
Yeah.
Who's next?
I can go. Vicki, I love what you just said about tying things back in. That's such a good reminder to me, and you gave me kind of a visual like that I can write in my notes to remind me of that. So thank you for that. And I have to say, when I watch you talk, you just have beautiful teeth. So you're like the walking billboard of what you do. I would say I second what Vicki said about Amanda and Jeff this week. Such powerful stuff that you guys have presented. And I'm really noticing that, like, you guys are saying, oh, and we're going to facilitate an activity today. And, you know, I still get a little bit of that nervous response of, oh my God. But it's getting better. I'm feeling more solid. And even last night I facilitated a group, and I didn't have this whole like, oh my God, got to put hours in. And like, I feel like I have these, I'm starting to anchor the hacks that help me just kind of move into, okay, we're going to do this group, and what's the topic going to be? And then being okay with the flow of it, and being amazed that if my intention was to talk about story with this group of women, I didn't even have to bring it up. They just started talking about it. So to me, that's gold, because as I think about facilitating more, the idea that it's easeful and not this tremendously stressful thing is huge. So thank you very much.
Huge, 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 Cynthia. That's awesome. You can hear it in your voice too. Like, you're like, oh, I got a little nervous. Like,
As opposed to like,
beautiful. Thank you.
Awesome. Miss Amber.
Hello. So I'm excited for today. I think facilitation is fun. I think
Uh-oh, can you guys hear her? No. Amber, you're very, very choppy.
You can't hear me. Okay. All right. I'm here, but I'm about to switch over to my other technology, and I'll just drop in later.
Okay, now we heard that. So.
Okay.
Okay.
I can try. I can
Yeah.
try to say it again.
Yeah, try it like
Okay.
that.
Okay. So what I was saying is I'm really excited about working with the structure of facilitation, because, you know, it's not, you go out there and you pull it out of the bag of cat and sit down, here's this great exercise, but I know that it's quite structured, that there are ways that can be done well, and, you know, ways that can be done sloppy. I think I've done both. And so I'm really looking forward to getting a context for how you put together a good activity that's reliably good. So yeah, it's going to be a good thing.
Awesome. That's so great. And just to check in with your own facilitation over the last couple weeks, how are you feeling differently than before?
I think I'm finding it easier to bring my whole self in, actually, into the process. what I'm noticing is it's interesting, like I'm getting the same messages from you guys as I am, a number of other places. Once you start thinking about this work, it's interesting how the universe conspires to give you everything that you need. And this piece, and that piece, this piece. So, I guess I'm feeling supported and I'm enjoying that.
Nice.
Good, fantastic. Yeah, and we're definitely here to support you. And this will today give you an amazing framework for how to start, at the very least, of knowing that this is a successful format to create an activity.
Yeah. And you're right. There is a lot of structure that goes into it, and somewhat painstakingly realized, I guess. I've definitely led a lot of activities that haven't followed a structure, and nothing has been as reliable as the structure that we're going to present to you today, that we've come together and both used a lot and all that good stuff. So
yeah, awesome. So let's jump in.
Okay.
Our first content slide is Darth Vader here, and this is about story arc. And in particular, we're going to talk about how to create a story and an arc of a story within really just 2 or 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. And in this example, we are going to be giving our story or a piece of our story. And this is in the framework of, if we only have 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes for this presentation and this activity, we cannot take up 10 of it with our own story, right? It's just going to take too long. So we need to try to create this within a 2 to 3 minute time frame. And that sounds like not a lot of time, but it actually is quite a bit of time. And I think we've seen that through asking you guys, and also through our activities, even this week. Hey, you have 2 minutes, ready, go. And then people are surprised when they either run out of time or have more time left. So we're going to practice this piece today as well, real time, toward the end of the call. And so let's go into the learning here. I think many of us on this call have heard of the first bullet point, the HPLP. That's high point, low point, turning point, high point. And right now, this week, I did an activity on the hero's or the heroine's journey, which is the cycle of what makes a good story. Every Hollywood movie is made off of the hero and heroine's journey. Every book plot is done off of this kind of a cycle. So that's what's naturally going to be engaging for the audience. So we want to consider those things. And to preface, this can be a client story, a client example. It doesn't have to be about you, but it is, in this example, we are telling the story ourselves. So Amanda, I'd love for you to jump in and talk about the high point, low point, turning point, high point first.
Yeah, that's just such a great structure. And even last time we had our facilitator training, a couple weeks ago, we had you guys do that with your own story about your connection to the group that you were introducing. And you might leave off the first high point in some way. That's the one that's like, it's always on the bubble. If you have been introduced, for example, and they've just, built you up and shown your credibility, then you don't always necessarily need to say that one. So you just go into your low point, or in the hero's journey, like that conflict, and then the turning point, it was this way and that. So I'll give you my sentence starters for each of those real quick. So high point, my life is amazing. Now I'm so grateful that, but it wasn't always this way. Low point, low point. And it went on like that until, I'm talking fast here, you guys. Went on like that until turning point. Oh, good. Jeff's putting them in the chat.
So go ahead and say those again, Amanda.
Okay. My life is amazing. And here's why. That's your high point. But it wasn't always this way. Low point. it went on like that until, and then I don't really have a great sentence starter for the next high point. It's like, and that allowed me to. That's when I use it.
Yeah, and now I get to, and now I love.
Yeah, and your second high point can be a lot more heartfelt than your first one, which is like more the real world examples. But the second one is like a global mission and global why, just as a flavor thing. And yeah, that can all just be good. I'm glad you like them, Cynthia. That can all just be like, you could have 1 or 2 sentences after each of those sentence starters, and there's your 2 to 3 minutes. So that's how you really make sure you bones of there. And it can be a client example. It can even be a mentor example. It can be something that you've heard, but the next bullet point on there is you're going to model the level of vulnerability that you're going to ask your audience. So if it's not a vulnerable story, it doesn't touch them in their heart, you know, if you're able to just stay in your head while you're telling this other person's story and you really want them to go deep, you might want to think about that. It might need to be your story. So just choose it wisely based on what you want the audience to do.
Yeah, and Amanda talked about the low point being really important. That's the conflict. That's the emotional trouble. That's the danger. That's the suspense of the story, is what's going to happen. And then the turning point is how things changed. And the final high point, again, like Amanda said, is more heartfelt. This is how I now came through that challenge, through that conflict. And that arc, that emotional roller coaster, that range of scary low point to now peaceful, blissful, successful high point, that change, that range is what brings people in. Mm-hmm. And so we want to be vulnerable as we can, and that brings our range, you know, to a low point or to one end of the spectrum. And then when we come through, it brings the audience through that journey, through that energy. So that's what's important to really draw people in.
And most of the time, your turning point is going to be the content that you're about to share. So that's another little hack too.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Like last time when we set you guys up to do this about CVC, said, guess what? Your turning point is going to be CVC. So that turning point is like what this is all about. So oftentimes my turning point is, then I learned this skill. You know, it went on like this until I learned these skills we're about to do today, and then it changed everything. That could be your whole turning point right there.
Yeah, and the other points on this slide: can the audience see themselves in the story? And is the story relatable and relevant to the desired outcome of what you're trying to do? And what Amanda just said, the content, the turning point is the content you're about to share. So that automatically makes your story relevant.
Yeah.
And again, can the audience see themselves in the story? Maybe this is obvious, maybe not to everyone here. We want to consider the expertise level of the audience. We want to consider, what do they do for a living? What are their values in life? If we're talking to, you know, a PTA at a school, they're not going to be interested in a sales conversation. And if we're talking in front of business people, they may not be interested in talking about family dynamics. Like, you know, they may, but we really need to pay attention to, can the audience see themselves, and is this relatable to the context of the meeting, or you know, why are we doing this activity?
That's a really good point, Jeff, because even if every business person in the room is a parent and a member of a family, they're there for business.
Mhm.
So we really got clear about that at CBC. Like we were inviting in other speakers that weren't necessarily business focused. Maybe they were, I don't know, card readers of some kind, or only had the conscious or the spiritual. And we found that, you know, it really hits most people when they're both conscious and business. That's what your talk has got to be about.
Yeah. And like Amanda said, for the context of CBC in particular.
Right, for CBC, yeah. So think about that group.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we're going to move forward. We want to have plenty of time to actually implement, which is a great, you know, we all understand that's how we learn. So does anyone have questions on this particular slide before we move forward?
Feeling good?
Okay.
Good. You guys have heard this before, so now we're just kind of putting it in the context of leading an activity. So good. It's a good thing.
Yeah. All right. So let's dig in. Activity creation, the 3-point framework. I mentioned to Amanda, and I just said this really quickly in front of the group on Wednesday, that I had a 7-point framework for my activity ready to go if I felt that that was going to be appropriate. I had a 3-point and a 7-point, and immediately I knew that 45 minutes was not enough time to go beyond a 3-point framework. That would have been more like a 2-hour workshop probably, if I wanted to go in that level of depth. So unless you're running an entire workshop, if it's anything less, then we would stick with the 3-point framework. It's phenomenal. People understand it. It makes sense. It's short and sweet. And so let's dig in. So the content, but your content that you're wanting to teach or facilitate into some kind of 3-point framework. I mean, basically you just got to figure out how to do that, right? I mean, if your content has 10 steps, okay, generally, what are the areas? What are the 3 areas of those steps? Yeah, Anime, I'd love for you to jump in and talk about just like why 3 points.
You know, it's really great for the mind, as you've heard. I mean, gosh, Toastmasters is like all about the 3 points, and I'm not a put me in a box type of person, but again, after testing this, it really is true. And if you do have 7 steps or 10 steps, to put it down into 3 steps obviously simplifies it and saves time. And I was even thinking of a couple of exercises I've done that I would even consider really just 1 step. But when I can tease out the 3 parts of it, it makes it way more clear, gives people baby steps. So that's so great. And I find that like one of the 3 points seems to be the biggest breakthrough for people. They're like, oh, you know, but having 3 there guarantees you hit each audience member wherever they are at. You never know which one it's going to be. It's going to hit them. But that helps with the 2nd point here, which is appropriate for varying levels of expertise. You know, and it gives the mind enough to think about too. So that's
So for example, the activity that I led Wednesday was on the hero's journey, and the hero's journey there's a full circle of 7 points, 10, 12. It depends on the model that you look up. And I broke it down into 3, which is separation, conflict, and unification. And so that was an example of how I taught that. We're separating away from what we've known in the past. We're moving into some kind of conflict that creates that change in us, creates that transformation. And then we reunify either with our family, you know, with the quote unquote village, or we bring that teaching back to then our now clients, and we teach them the learning that we've gone through in that full circle. So that's a really quick example of how I broke down a complicated hero's journey into 3 points.
Yeah.
So these other points are consideration, dynamic engagement from the audience. How do I get the audience the most involved? That's when co-creation happens. We want them to come to these ahas on their own as much as possible, and that's by getting them as involved as possible. We want to consider what outcome do I want the audience to experience, and what framework gives them that outcome, or how do I want to deliver my content in a way that is appealing to the audience. For instance, another 3-point tenet that I use and have used with some of you is what's important for growth or learning any new concept is mentorship, one-on-one mentorship, group support, and a strategy. So if I were to create an activity based on that, I could break out one of those points, say strategy, and teach a piece of strategy. And I don't have to go into why one-on-one mentorship is necessary or good, or why group support is good. I can just go right into one of my points. Or maybe if I'm teaching in front of a group of counselors, I might teach them why group support is important and why one-on-one mentorship is not the only facet of support that may be necessary. You know, this person may need group support as well. And I've actually used that conversation with clients too, who are, say, going to just AA and they're not getting one-on-one help and they don't have a particular strategy otherwise. They're just going to a group and they don't have the other two pieces. So that's an example of how I can just bring what I do into these 3 points and talk about any one of them.
It's so good. It's so good. I find that sometimes I feel that it's oversimplifying for me to put something into just 3 things, but it is always appreciated.
Yeah.
By the audience, they want the simple. They don't live in the same world I live in. They want, just give me, I put the word anchor this morning. Just give me that anchor that I can grasp. It doesn't mean that they now think that's all there is to it. You know, so in my signature talk, I simplified pages and pages of marketing knowledge that I have into who your audience is, what to say to them, and where are they? Who, what, where? And it was like, really? It all comes down to those 3 words? Oh, I just want to really overcomplicate this for just, you know, it's so hard. But man, that has been just gold. People just go, what? I can do that. I can do who, what, where. No problem. I've done those words since I was in 5th grade. I'm good, you know.
Yeah, Amanda, that reminds me of the goal that came out for me on Tuesday for your activity, which was understanding people want to put us in a box first so that they feel safe, they feel like they understand what's going on, and they feel secure so they can move forward. If they don't understand you within a particular box first, then they're lost, they're confused, I don't know what you're talking about, or they may feel unsafe. So us as practitioners, we're like, there's so much of this, I don't want to be put in a box. But we need to do that first, put ourselves in a box. So that's what this 3-point framework is doing, is it's putting us in an understandable, not complicated, again, framework for our audience. And then we can expound on that. Yeah, so that's what came away from me from Amanda's activity on Tuesday. It was fantastic. So let's move forward. Yeah, Vicki, please.
Amanda, could you just real quick say those again? What were those sentences? Who your audience is? What?
Who your audience is, what to say to them.
Oh, okay.
And where are they?
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that this is starting to trigger you guys of, what content do I want to teach? Do I have a 3-point framework already? What is at least a couple of those points? Because this is really the creative, well, it's one of the creative pieces of creating an activity. Is like, what do I want to teach? And how do I fit that into a 3?
Yeah.
And I'll just touch on the question here on the screen. How can I get the audience the most involved? And I told this to Jeff as we were prepping. I think Jeff's activity on Wednesday was one of the best we've ever had at CBC. And like top 3, you know? And one reason is because he did not stop with just like getting us a little involved. You know, like, here's the framework, now share in your pairs. That would have been a great activity, just to share in our pairs. Like, we were done, you know, I was feeling great. And then he got us even more involved, took it to the next step. Now, thankfully, time allowed. Time won't always allow for everyone, but time allowed to, and he allowed the time to get people in front of the room. And to me, that just like sent it over the moon. So how can I get the audience the most involved? Not just a little involved, or like, you know, I hate when like speakers say to me, oh yeah, I'm a really interactive speaker. I just like totally engage the audience all the time. And what they mean by that is they have the audience, you know, respond to questions throughout their speech by raising their hand. Oh, do you guys do this? Oh yeah, like they think that makes them an engaged speaker or an interactive activity leader. No, giving your audience the stage like Jeff did, that's interactive. Having people share from their heart, that's interactive. Having time where you're not talking and they're talking, that's interactive dynamic. So most involvement you can fit is a great question to push the edges.
Awesome. Thanks for the compliment, Amanda. I appreciate that. So let's dig in. This page right here is basically for every activity. You're going to be considering these things. 3-point, varying levels, dynamic, what's the outcome that I want. So here is more of nuts and bolts on this next page right here. How can the audience apply this 3-point framework to their situation? And then how do I step up their levels of engagement? How do I do that? What Amanda just said. Here are examples. You're going to have them pair and share with each other. You're going to have them break into small groups. The I do, we do, you do is an escalating level of involvement, engagement, individual work that I have used in teaching for years. So I do is I model it in front of the room. We do is we do it together. Amanda has a great example in the second subpoint there. Ask for a volunteer and demo it in front of the audience. Go ahead, Amanda. Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be like, I'm going to ask you to do something as a pair. For example, one of the activities you guys might have played at CBC is where you have to have a conversation all in questions. Oh, are we getting a little feedback? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Go ahead.
So you have to have a conversation just using questions. So before I turn them loose, after I explain, but before I turn you loose, I'll invite somebody up to the front and go back and forth with the questions and show how it works and how it happens. And then I'll say, okay, get in your pairs and do it. Now this is particularly helpful if you're going to do anything like vulnerable at all, and you want to model, again, that level of vulnerability. You would bring up a partner and you would be the vulnerable one. So let's say you were going to do, I don't know, this is coming to my mind, a trust fall, right? Like, let's just say you're going to do trust fall in your pairs. You would bring somebody up in front of the room. You would re-explain the instructions with them there, and then you would be the one to fall and trust, okay? And then you might even demonstrate, like, commenting, debriefing yourself of what happened.
Yeah, so you're going to lead with the most vulnerability, is like Amanda said, and then that's a literal practical application of the trust fall. You're going to do first what you're going to ask the audience to do, and bringing that person up front, you're kind of putting them as the temporary facilitator for you as the mock audience.
Yeah.
So you're gonna lead with your own vulnerability. Yeah, I mean, I'd love for you to talk about the small group, that third subpoint of example, 1 speaker and 2 to 4 audience members.
Yeah, so this is just stepping up from pair to different kind of pair to small group. You could do a group of 3 where one person is doing the vulnerable piece, sharing, and then you have the 2 supports, or 2 to 4 or something, and you go around the group. And we do that a lot in breakout sessions. We do groups of 3 and 4 at CBC. And then the next level would be sharing with the whole group. So this was, again, beautifully demonstrated this Wednesday with Jeff's pair share. And then he invited one person in front of the room to share with the whole group. So he, got progressive audience involvement. Instead of just what if he had, tell me what you guys think. If he had just shared vulnerably himself, his story, outlined the whole hero's journey, and then said, okay, who wants to come up in front of the room and share their hero's journey? What if we hadn't had that step of the paired share? How would that have gone for you guys? Good, bad?
Totally
I think-
different. Yeah.
Sorry, Cynthia, what was that?
I think the leap into that activity would have been a lot harder. There would have been a lot more personal to get through to the other side. And I don't think it would have become such an integrated experience. It would be like other kind of trainings where you're just you're either courageous or you're not courageous, and you don't really anchor the process really well, so you don't get to really use what you're learning as you leave.
Yes, I completely agree. And Amber, what do you think your experience would have been?
Well, I think really Jeff used kind of a classic teaching technique, right? So you learn the process, then you practice the process, and then you use it, right? So if Jeff had demoed and then somebody else demoed, it wouldn't have been the same thing. It would have just been more like an entertainment situation. Interesting. I'll keep that idea in mind, but you wouldn't really have learned the technique.
So good. I love that you brought that up. I had my facilitator trainer always used to say, this is not watching TV, people. This is happening right now. You're in the room. This means something. Don't let it just be entertainment. Don't watch from a distance. This is for you. And you would have totally, if you had not been courageous, as Cynthia mentioned, if you chose, to just sit back and be like, this is too much for me. You would have definitely been able to just watch an entertaining little TV show for a second. And totally agree with that. So that's why we step it up, because it's just to do something in front of the room that you just did, and so it's the second time you're doing it right away in front of the room. That is so much easier than having it be the first time I'm doing it and now it's in front of people. So you guys get it.
Cool. Cynthia?
Just a little side note. I'm wondering, as I'm thinking about this process, how we might also guide and lead partners and how they give feedback to each other. Because I got random feedback from the person I was with that was kind of after the process, that was kind of man, I was just super vulnerable. And I just think that other person didn't know how to receive and give feedback in that position. And that was just something I thought of for myself. So.
Yeah, you are absolutely allowed to set up what the person can say, as feedback. You can set up that it's not about feedback.
That's a good point. Yeah. So a couple of things, right? There's always going to be people in the world that give us their unsolicited advice, which I'm sure you recognize. I also like clapped immediately when people were done, and I didn't give advice. Like, it wasn't about me critiquing anyone. It was like, whatever, yeah, we're just celebrating that people had courage to go up there and do that. It would have been an extra little good point for me to say that out loud. Like, we're not offering feedback right now. This is just to practice the courageous steps of what we just learned, and to just, to clap for people. So that's a good point. That, do we want feedback or not? And just because I'm, as the facilitator, not giving feedback, I should protect everyone's vulnerable space and say out loud, hey, we're not giving feedback right now. We're just taking these steps and having the courage to do it. So that's great. That helps me understand. I hadn't considered that, honestly, Cynthia. I'd only considered I'm not going to do feedback because I don't want anyone to feel judged. I didn't consider that, hey, some other people might just give unsolicited advice. So that's a good point. I want to say a couple of other minor things, and then we're going to go into the true anatomy of the activity in the next slide here.
Awesome.
I did consider CBC. It's not the Chamber of Commerce. People do want interaction. They do want to learn steps of content. And we do in CBC want to learn about the person. And we understand in CBC that helps us connect, and that facilitates business. That helps us know, like, and trust the person. Was my other minor point about that. So I did consider that when I had people get up in front of the room and share their story. It wasn't just to learn my content at a deeper level, which, yes, they will, and that's great. It was also the cool side effect that we all get to see some vulnerability from this person. We all get to see part of their story. And I did consider, I'm going to have one person from each group come up. So if there's really someone that doesn't want to do it, they don't have to. I wasn't forcing everyone. And of course, if both people in the group just coincidentally were like terrified and did not want to do it, that's of course fine. But I figured, hey, out of each group, there's going to be one person that can kind of be pushed to be a little bit more courageous here. And so I did think about all those things when I was creating the activity, that it was appropriate for CBC.
Yeah, that's really good. And the first time you run an activity, you're always going to find just the tiny little, tweaks. So, yeah. Yeah,
and I'm making a note about, like, I need to protect everyone's vulnerability when I ask that in an activity by saying, we're not doing feedback right now. So that's great. Mm-hmm. Good. Let me go into our final slide, which is pretty jam-packed with information here. Anatomy of an activity.
This is it. This is the structure.
This is the guts. So we talked about your story, the story arc, in 2 to 3 minutes. You're going to teach your 3-point framework, choosing 1 or 2 or all 3 of the points you'll make to actually practice in the activity. Again, many times we're just taking one of those 3 points and practicing that. Yes. Especially when you only have a little bit of time, of course. You're just going to pull one of them out.
Yes. In my signature talk that I was telling you, the who, what, where, we always pull out the what. I don't try to do all 3. That would be like, oh my gosh, too much. So I just pull out the easiest one to dig into the surface and get some gold. The who takes a long time. The where is pretty nebulous. The what, we can get a payoff real quick.
Mm-hmm. Include audience interaction. I did in my talk on Wednesday I raise my hand. Has anyone ever had this kind of situation and the answer is yes? So I did that kind of piece. I also told my vulnerable low point of my story and then said, our ego feels like we're the only ones, especially when we're in the middle of it. But if I asked every one of you, I'm sure every single one of you have had tragedy in your life, or tragedy, someone that's very close to you in your life. So I led with my low point, and then I included the audience in recognizing that they've all had their own low points in life. They've all had tragedy in life. Maybe not exactly the same as mine, but again, the oneness of CBC is that we all share the same set of emotions. We're all human. So I connected us in that way too. And that's another way to include the audience. Then you're going to give instructions, and yeah, go ahead, Amanda.
I think that's really important. Sorry, I think I might just be lagging a bit. I think that is so important to mention after you share vulnerably, that I'm sure everyone can relate to this, makes it more relatable, because if you haven't had exactly what Jeff's talking about, you know, what the speaker happens to have gone through, again, it makes it more like, if you haven't had that, you could just kind of watch TV, right? That's Jeff over there. He went through this medical issue. But when he says every one of us has probably had something you can relate to, it's like, oh yeah, I've had this. And just in case I was getting ready to, you know, think Jeff was special and all that, it like brings me back in to say, no, I'm Jeff. I'm just like Jeff. This applies to me. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. What I'm taking away, and I'd love to hear what Vicky, Cynthia, and Amber have to say, is even saying things like we've all gone through similar things, that sentence gives you more connection with your audience. So that's kind of a hack. You're not assuming that they're going to make that connection. You take one sentence and say, we've all gone through tragedy. And that sentence gives you greater levels of connection with the audience.
It's a very humble thing to say too, after sharing an intense story.
Yeah, so let's pause. We have our small group today. I'd like a little bit more feedback and interaction from everyone. So is there a particular speaker that you've seen, and it doesn't have to be just me on Wednesday, which I appreciate the example. Is there other speakers that you've seen, and how do they engage the audience? Do you have a favorite that, you know, we could jot down and go look up later on? Like, I always love to hear, oh, I saw this amazing TED Talk, and get that knowledge from y'all. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you, Vicky, Cynthia, Amber.
I really appreciated T. Harv Eker at the Millionaire Mind Intensive series of seminars.
What did you see him do?
So he did have several things. He did have a lot of raising of hand, but he also had us finish his sentences for him sometimes.
Nice.
Or he would ask back, like he would say, you only need 3 points to make your speech good. I mean, so I'll use your example and put it in his framework, right? Mm-hmm. So you only need 3 points. How many points do you need?
3.
Yeah.
Nice.
So he did things like that. And he did a lot of activities where you break up in groups of 2 or 3. And he would also have these energy shift moments where he would say something like, are you with me? And everybody would say, you know, yeah. And then he would say, all right, give a high five to the person on your left and your right. Or turn to the person on your left and your right and tell them, you're awesome. So,
yeah. Good.
So lots of things like that.
It's I like that. One thing that always reminds me of is sometimes I preface and say, I'm going to ask you to do something cheesy, and then do the turn to your left and right and give a high five. Maybe that's just me, but when I get a lot of the 3 points, how many points? 3, you know, it starts. So I just kind of call into the room that I'm going to ask him to do some kind of cheesy stuff, or like, I'm going to get the energy up, or.
Yeah, he does too. Right at the very beginning, he appoints, or he addresses that similarly to like Amanda did. And he would say, you're not just watching. I'm not here to entertain you. I'm here to, and how you do, and he has this phrase, he would say, how you do anything is how you do everything. So if you're going to sit on the sidelines and watch this whole seminar go by, is that how you're living your life? You're just on the sidelines watching life go by? or are you going to engage? You'll get the most out of this. The more you participate, the more you'll get out of it. So the more you what? Participate. He said, he lays it right out. I'm going to ask you to do a lot of things, and he makes it an assignment even. So watch how you participate when it's time to participate, because how you do anything is how you do everything. And if your life is not working, maybe you can learn something from how you're participating or not in this very safe place.
Yeah, I love it. Love it.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, it's very good. And I think the same thing with it. You know, there's the cheesiness factor, but I can feel my brain working differently when I freaking give that high five and say 3 points, you know, then it's coming from me. So that's great.
Yeah.
Good. Amber, Cynthia, anybody you see doing this well out there?
I think, good. I talked over you last time, Amber, so now you go.
This is our thing today, I guess. I've been listening to a guy named Michael Neal lately, and he it hasn't been live, but he does a beautiful way of really engaging you as a listener. And one of the things that he does is periodically he'll have this little cute musical noise go in the background to say, oh, just seeing if you're paying attention to, it's you right now having this experience, right? To just bring people back into not drifting away. And I guess the thing that he does to get that, he does that to like get the audience involved. It's like you can't talk back, but he still finds a way to check in and make sure that you stay aware. So that's something that I thought was pretty cool.
Nice.
Great.
Yeah. It sounds like a signature thing for him too. I haven't heard of that kind of exact thing. Would you say? Have you heard that? Have you seen that? Anyone else? I'm not sure exactly what kind of little sound.
I've seen it elsewhere, but it's in, like teaching meditation practices and spiritual practices.
Got it. Right on. So it sounds like it's triggering that state for people as well. It's like a trained state almost of bringing back to presence, it sounds like. Yeah, gotcha. Awesome.
Cynthia, you want to chime in here?
Sure. Well, I think my point is not to so much say where I've seen all these incredible hacks and bullet points you guys have just presented. It's more of I watched someone do the beginning leap of how to like anchor an audience, how to get them immediately engaged, and then to have us hanging on their every word and everything they led us from there. And that was watching a speaker begin her story like she first got the room entirely quiet. She got 50 women quiet by just like going like this and like walking back and forth and this whole like shh. And then she started her story with, it was a October night and the leaves were flying and the rain was coming down. And to me, that really was such a wonderful way to begin the process. And for me, it's a way that I can begin and not feel so like, like that stress I get with the linear. And so I'm going to tie that into, man, what a great way to start different parts of the thing you're offering. If you need that kind of anchor or to redraw people in, even if you're doing 3 bullet points and you kind of sense that you need to pull people back in, what a great way. Or like tapping into, Amanda, what you did with drawing out, and Jeff, what you did with drawing things out. What a great way to preempt what you're about to do or to anchor about what you're going to do. I really appreciate those things.
Awesome. Great awarenesses. That's what it's all about. Just, watch and learn. Watch what other people are doing and incorporate that in. Just real quick, I'll let you know that Linda is texting and she might be able to jump on with us. So we'll see if she can work it out.
So this top section in Anatomy of an Activity, we got to include audience interaction, and then you're going to give your instructions and ask if the audience has questions about your instructions. This can take less time or more time depending on how complicated you're asking the breakout group to be, for instance, or if your instruction, let me just say something here. I'm not a fan of, hey, take 2 minutes and write this for yourself and the whole room's going to be quiet while you do this. And some people may be done, some people will not be done within that 2 minutes. I'm not a fan of just like going into quiet and having people write. I will never do an activity where that happens. I think it's super disconnecting. People get on their phone. It's like just quiet in the room. I don't like that. I think it brings people's shields up, and they don't explore as much. And then some people are done faster, and then they're bored or on their phone, and some people aren't done, and it's not enough time. And they also don't have anyone else to bounce the information off of or ask questions of or engage with. So I'm never going to give instructions where it says, okay, just sit quietly now and do this for yourself. Like at least not in a 20-minute or a 45-minute activity or presentation. Maybe if it's a longer workshop and that's appropriate. But that's just something that I always think about.
Very interesting. I'll share the other side of that, where I do think it could be valuable to have people write for a very short period of time if you have a lot of questions, and then share. I also agree, Jeff, that just a writing activity, when you came to a group, like you want to be in the group. So yeah, I wouldn't want people to stop with the writing, but I personally, my style is to sometimes allow them to just sit with their thoughts and then share.
Mm-hmm. So. And you always want to make sure if they have questions, don't just say, okay, ready, go, and not open up the space for questions. I did that this week. I said, is there any questions? And Amanda qualified what I was doing. She asked, I was asking people to be vulnerable about conflict that they've gone through. And one tenet Amanda and I have talked about at CBC is we're not trying to open a can of worms that we're working on right now. Like we're not asking people to share their bleeding open wounds right now. We're asking them to share their scars from the past that they've healed from and overcome. And the hero's journey is the full circle of going through the conflict and coming back to a place where they feel empowered with that new knowledge or that transformation. So Amanda's question was, is this stuff we've gone through in the past or stuff we're going through right now? Which was like, hint, hint, Jeff, make sure everyone shares their scar, not their open bleeding wound. And I think that's a very good, it's something to realize is asking someone to share their current bleeding wound can really go off the tracks. Someone can really be in a place where they're not going to be able to come out from that place. They won't feel empowered if they haven't solved that problem or healed from that yet. So I'd love to hear, honestly, from if anyone wants to, we don't have to go to every person, but does that hit home of asking them to share their scars and not their bleeding wound?
You guys do you see the difference?
Yes, sorry, I was my mute button was hidden below one of my tabs. And I'm like, where's the unmute? That makes total and complete sense. And I do want to recognize that there is a difference between sometimes the like emotional depth people want to go to. So I would say there are some times with a group of women that the bleeding wound, the gaping wound it's totally appropriate and they want that. And like people are like, yes, let's like pull this out. So that's just what it made me think of, the polarity of sometimes there is that.
I completely agree. Certainly in the context of like business where you're wanting to share your strengths in a business, that's why we are setting that tone in CBC. The other thing I will say to that, Cynthia, because I totally agree, like that's a reason you would join a women's group, is that you're going to be able to share, from what's happening right now. And what you mentioned earlier is going to become way important in that context of setting up how we're going to do advice, how we're going to do feedback, how we're going to respond when that happens, when someone shares. Like all of that must be set up really, really well if they are going to share from their bleeding wound, because that, when I'm triggered and sharing, that triggers other people way more readily, and then they go into advice or whatever. So I'll just toss that into your hat to simmer.
Yeah, great points on the context of the meeting and what the goal is. Absolutely. Hey, Linda.
Hey.
Hey, look at you walking outside. We're all jealous.
Yeah, I can't even tell if my sound is on, is it?
You're good. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Yeah. Everybody's kind of getting ready to go somewhere, and I have no idea. I just got the heck out and went for a walk so I could do this.
Awesome. Are you able to be with us till 10?
We'll see. I have no idea what they're doing, and I'm kind of at their whatever today. So that's why I went for a walk. I'm just out of it so I can be in it.
Yeah, good. Well, we love you showing up. We love to see your face. So thanks, Linda.
So thanks for letting me just walk around and listen in and do what I can walking in the street.
Nice. Awesome. All right, let's jump back to our anatomy of an activity. One huge point that Amanda wanted to make sure we brought up, and I thought it was a phenomenal point, which was after the instructions in Q&A, the subpoint there says, allow the moral or the point of your activity to come out organically. You don't have to spoil it ahead of time. You don't need to necessarily tell people everything that they're going to go through in the activity. You want that to come out organically. So Amanda, I'd love for you to talk about that.
Yeah, so you're going to be really clear on the content, be really clear on the instructions of what they're going to do. And then you're not going to say hardly anything, if anything at all, about what they're going to experience and how they're going to feel. Because one, that's the reason for the activity, is they want to feel their own thing. And two, it's just kind of rude to tell someone, so you're going to feel really uncomfortable with this, or this is going to be really vulnerable and hard. And, don't tell them that. If they go through that little journey themselves, that's great. But it's not smart to tell people what they're about to experience internally.
Yeah, I'd add on, it's great to invite them. Like you may go through this. I invite you to do this, but you're not basically telling them they have to.
Yeah.
That's that small difference of an invitation. Yeah,
that's a great point. You can say, it's okay if you're not feeling comfortable. I used to say all the time in CBC, we're creating this really safe space, not always comfortable, but safe. So it's okay to mention it, but if just watch when you want to say, you're going to feel this and you're going to experience this. That's not what you want to say ahead of time. After the fact, you can share what you experienced when you played this game or you did this activity. But yeah.
Yeah, down here at the bottom, farther down in our bullets on this page, it says share your personal experience if appropriate. And we'll get to that. It's down here during the debrief, during the very last 5 minutes of the activity. It's not up here when you're giving instructions.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not trying to spoil things by saying, oh, I had this experience from all of this. You can have your low point within your story and your turning point within the context of your story. But in your instructions, you're not like giving a spoiler. You're going to save those takeaways for the debrief if they're appropriate.
So that's a real nuance, but I think you guys get that.
Yeah. Especially during the instructions, when like this story is right brain, instructions are more left brain, and you don't need to spoil the ending when you're giving instructions.
Yeah.
So all of that, this is what I call the introduction, this whole beginning piece. It's you're introducing the activity. You're telling your story or a client's story in 2 to 3 minutes, using the high point or starting with low point, turning point, high point. You're teaching, you're including the audience, you're asking if they have questions about your instructions of how you're going to do the small breakout group. You're teaching that and asking questions, and all of that should take around 10 minutes. And that's what it did take for me on Wednesday as well. When I did my activity Wednesday, it took about 10 to 12 minutes.
Awesome.
Mm. So then you're going to have them break out into their small groups. And Amanda said something amazing, I thought, the other week when we're doing this facilitation training, is realize that if you want each individual person to have more time within the small breakout groups, the group should be either 2 people or 3 people. If you group people into larger subgroups, like 4 or 5 in the subgroup, each person will have less time to talk. And so it's less intimate. They're going to have less ability to customize what you're asking them to do. So it's just something to be aware of. And I did think about that this week. I wanted people to be in pairs. I wanted it to be as intimate as possible and to give each person as much time to work on their own with, with a peer as well, of course, not just on their absolute own, but with a peer. So I made sure we broke into pairs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, depending on how much work you're asking them to do, you want to consider each person's probably going to need 5 to 7 minutes, depending on the depth of what you're asking them to do. If you're only asking them to do something very surface level, then they might need less than 5 minutes, and you might do a larger group of 3 or 4 or 5 within the subgroup. But realize if there is any depth at all, they're going to want about 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes per person.
Yeah. Yeah. So if your time, like very recently at CBC, I just had the worst angle on the clock in Loveland, and I really misjudged my time. I mean, I just thought it was saying a different time. And so I realized that I had to make my groups a lot smaller than I wanted to. So instead of 4, I did 2 or maybe 3, because that gives it takes less time to have a 2-person group than a 4-person group, for sure.
Yeah, and I also consider the space. Can I break these out into these groups, and does the room facilitate that well? Is it going to be too loud? Are the groups too close together? So can a group step into the hallway and do the work? So it really depends on your space as well and how loud it's going to get.
Yeah.
All right. Then your debrief and your takeaways are going to take at least 5 minutes. So you want to plan. And the takeaways and the debriefs are really where a ton of the value comes from the activity. Mm-hmm. And most of us in here are healers and coaches, and we realize when we ask the client at the end of the session, what are your takeaways from the session? and they say it in their own words and they think back and bring it out in their own words and their own experience, that's where it's really landing for them. So this debrief and takeaway is super, super important. I would always cut down the activity length, the small group breakout time, to allow for a debrief. You never want to cut your debrief out.
Yeah, at least 5 minutes. Probably 10 minutes is not going to feel too long for a juicy exercise, but somewhere 5 to 10. Yeah. And that's where you can share your personal experience of what you felt. And then if you feel like there's a key point here that they didn't really quite get to, this is when you would illuminate that and just make sure it gets said. You can bounce off of something that someone else has said, but just make sure if there's a big aha, like say it, because that's one thing I said in Loveland was I said that let's get in the box first and then get out of the box. That was something I bounced off of someone at the end of the debrief of my activity, and Jeff really took that away. So you still have a voice during the debrief. You don't have to respond to every single question, but
yeah, Cynthia.
I do have a question about debriefing. Is now an appropriate time, or?
Yeah.
So I've noticed, and again, I'll kind of, this can be men or women, but I'll use the example of women. I've noticed even in coaching sessions, like I've felt like we've done a debrief, we've kind of concluded, and then I've noticed there's still like 10 minutes of story afterwards that wants to come out. And to me, the story doesn't even seem to relate to what we did, but it's like this buildup of something that was still in there. And so number one, I'm like learning to plan, but number two, I'd love to know how to create context and structure in that in a group setting. So I still struggle of how to create a good container for debriefing and knowing how to sometimes I'll feel like it'll be like really linear and I'm like, I feel complete, but other people don't. And then sometimes I feel like I'm too lax and then it's really hard to tie up the strings. So.
Yeah, I'll share a little bit from my years of feminine presence classes, because I think I know what you're saying. So one thing that I had in my groups given to me just as part of the structure was like a physical cue that it's the end. So like when I put my hands out like this to join hands, we're wrapping up now, and I might even say, and if there's more that needs to get shared, we can share after we conclude. But I was the last one to share going around. And so I share when I'm done, I put my hands out, we all join hands. And then we have our last 2 sentences, we blow out the candle, and then it's like, okay, wrapped up. Then the other stories might come out and people can choose to, get up and go or not. How would something like that feel?
Thank you. And may I ask an additional question, or this could wait until another time? It sounds like what you're talking about is that and I remember that you kind of pre-train your audience for how this is going to look, especially if you see them multiple times. I'm kind of curious about when it's not a multiple times. And I've even given the cue of literally standing up and starting to pack away things, and the story and the people around me or the person's unperturbed. The story is just still it needs to come out. So I guess as I'm just learning to process that, I just want to ask if there's any further.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess this might even be an example. So because it's a specific example, and I know we have group work to do today, I'm going to demonstrate to you what I would maybe then help you to demonstrate is Awesome. Thank you, Cynthia. And let's see if we have time at the end to talk about that and today. And like, I'll follow up with you afterwards and we can talk about that specific case. And that might be something you could say in some way about that too. Cool. Great question.
I was about to make a joke about women and how they like to tell stories, but I'll just say that. It looks like, Linda, I don't know if you intended to raise your hand there.
I did, because
okay, yeah.
I don't know if my video's on or off or whatever, but I can't see because of the sun. So I love when you guys tell people this is great. I see there's a lot of discussion that you guys are still going strong. I encourage you to get with your group maybe afterwards for coffee and continue the discussion. Because that demonstrates, them meeting outside the group, which is what we encourage. Yeah, I just like that.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
Nice.
Cool.
All right, so let me talk a little bit about time. Let me take 30 seconds to finish this up, and then Amanda and I are going to facilitate y'all doing something just like this right now. So your introduction really is, I could put 5 to 10 minutes. And then down here, time for progressive audience involvement. So if our intro takes 5 to 10, we know that if we're doing a small breakout, it's going to take around 5 minutes a person if we're having them do any kind of depth in their work. And then the debrief is going to take 5 to 10. So we need to look at how much time we have and can I do progressive audience involvement? How much time am I going to be able to allow them in their small breakout group? If we only have 20 minutes for an activity, man, we need to make sure our instruction and our introduction is 5 to 7 minutes, as short as possible. And we're going to need at least 5 minutes for a debrief. So then that narrows us down to, okay, how many people in each small breakout group and how much time do I have for progressive involvement? And we need to work our way backwards, and we have to keep in our instruction and we have to keep in the debrief. So in between there, how much time is left. And I'd love for Amanda to jump in really fast. If I only had 15 minutes, I wouldn't do a small breakout group. I'd probably just facilitate all in the group together and ask for feedback right there, ask for feedback right here, and then do something all together if I had less than 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll say about that is the temptation is going to be to cut out your story sometimes. And it's just not okay. Just don't do it. Your story is one of the most important things. Cut it down, but don't cut it out. And don't rush through your instructions. If anything, you could just teach one piece of content. You could mention all 3 and then quickly get into the one. So that's what I would chop. And then, of course, the pair share. Oh, that's what I was going to say too, is that one of the easiest things to do for group involvement that still counts as really great group involvement is to have the audience members teach each other in a pair something that you just said in front of the room. So you can just say that. Just say, okay, I just shared a lot of information here. I want you to turn to your partner and tallest person goes first, teach the other person some of what you just learned. And then in 2 minutes, I'm going to stop you, and the other person's going to teach the same thing or the rest of it of what I just shared in the front. Boom. It's such a great hack.
Nice. So what we would like to do is you're going to create your introduction framework, your 2 to 3 minute story that's going to relate to the content. We want you to pick 3 bullet points of a particular content that relates to you and your business or and what you coach or in what you heal. And you're going to practice this in front of us. And it's going to take 5 to 7 minutes for you to do this. Now, Amanda, with the amount of time that we have, I was considering of maybe Cynthia, say, and Linda being a team, and Vicky and Amber being a team, and we can break you out. I can break you out into groups here in a second. And with the amount of time we have, it looks like we may only have time for one person in each group to go, right? And we're not asking you to teach, we're not asking you to have us go into small breakouts. We're asking you to do the introduction piece of it.
Right, which means you need to formulate your content into the 3 points of the framework, and create the activity. And yeah, I mean, we could do, Jeff, that kind of one person shares the story and teaches the framework, and the other person does the instructions and the Q&A.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
Do team creation and team setup.
Now, the point here is we don't want you to stress about how good this is going to be. Really, it's practice of, okay, let's put content into 3 points. Okay, get involvement with us, all of us as the audience, and then give us the instructions of what we would do. And then you're going to ask us if we have questions on those instructions.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, what questions y'all have? So we're going to model this, right? What questions do you have of what we're going to have you do here?
I'm sorry, I was making sure I got Amanda's point down of like how you can have a partner teach another partner. I apologize, can you just give me the quick rundown of what the 3 points we're doing again?
Yeah, that's all right. So you're just going to pick a piece of content that you want to teach, give it a 3-point framework, and then you're going to, so you're going to do that in a breakout group. Then when we come back together, you're going to give the intro, which means you're going to tell your quick story, give the framework, and then the other person is going to give the instructions and ask for some Q&A. Okay? So you'll team create the activity, and then you'll team present it.
So Amanda, how about each of you and I go into one of the groups? So I'll go with, say, Vicky and Amber, and you go with Cynthia and Linda. Cool. And we'll take 10 minutes to do this, to create it, and we'll come back in 10 minutes and then present.
Okay, sounds great.
Awesome. So let me do the breakout rooms right here. 5 participants.
I'll just be a fly on the wall unless you ask me and need me.
That should work.
Okay. Join.
All right, so I should be awesome. Amber, can you hear us? And Vicky, are you there? Looks like you are.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, perfect.
I'm here too, but I'm having technical difficulties and I keep dropping the feed, but I'm here and I may be popping in and out a little bit. I'm sorry.
Sure, that's okay. So Vicky, Amber, do either of you have an activity you've done in the past that has a 3-point framework at all? If we start with that.
I have not, but I'm thinking of something I frequently say to people that is a 3-point framework that I give to clients. I wonder if it's possible to make something of it for this purpose.
Yeah, please. What's that?
Which is, I tell people you only need 3 things to have a successful home care routine as far as keeping your teeth healthy. Of course, they're actually expecting me to say you have to brush, you have to floss, and you have to use irrigation. But that's not it at all. I see the tilt in their eyes all the time. I say, first, whatever it is you're going to use must fit in your hand. And number 2, it must fit in your mouth. And number 3, it must fit in your lifestyle. So then I was just thinking perhaps I could make a short activity if people were to pair up in groups of 2 to focus on the lifestyle thing, like what things work and don't work. And it's ridiculous, for example, to insist someone must use a water pick irrigation device if they have a pedestal sink in their bathroom and no countertop space, right? So
Yeah, awesome point.
They're not going to do it.
Yeah, Vicky, I think that's fantastic. It fits into the 3 points. And then lifestyle one seems to be the obvious choice that they would break out and work on together and give each other ideas first. So again, here's an example of, you're not going to spoil it for them. You're not going to give them a huge list of all the choices. You're going to let them come up with what's going to fit into my lifestyle. And then at the end, you might give, and then here's one other thought I considered. But they've already had their voice. They've co-created their ideas first. That's great. So let's put that on the table. And Amber, what's your thoughts of what you've taught before and how it could be into 3 simple points of, here's what to consider, and I'm going to teach 1, or I'm going to teach all 3?
Yikes. This is not flowing for me today.
Sure.
Let's see. Okay, at least I'm not muted. So
let me jump in. I've heard you talk about home care. Like how do I take care of something like a bee sting or a burn at home? What do I do? Right.
Right. Sure. So
it could be grouped into 3. It could be grouped into 3 things, like bites, burns, and one other thing, say. Or here are the things that you can take care of at home, and here's 3 kind of categories of those things.
Right.
So if
talk about bites, burns, and bruises.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. Bites, burns, and bruises. And then depending on how much time you had, you would say, I have great information on how to deal with all 3 of these things quickly at home with remedies you can get from the corner store. Today, with our time, we're going to talk about one of these 3, say. We're going to talk about whatever, bruises.
Right.
And so how would you do a breakout activity with that? I mean, I'm immediately thinking, what does the person have in their home? What would they go through in their mind when there is kind of an emergency? So if your child went through this and they got this bruise, how would you handle it? How do you handle it now? Here's my recommendation. Those are the things that are coming up for me, is engaging the audience in story of a scenario when they or their child has had a bruise, and what did they do and what could they do differently in the future, say. And they could talk about those things in a small breakout group with each other. So those are just the top of mind ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I did, not something exactly like that, but something kind of similar to that with CBC one time, back when the format was a little bit different. And, we used Amanda's trick with, teach the person next to you.
Yeah.
What we just talked about. Think about a time when this tool would have been useful, and tell the person next to you, and how you would use that tool should it happen again.
Awesome. Okay, between the 2 of you, and it doesn't matter to me, Vicky or Amber, who wants to use their particular content?
Amber, I like yours a lot.
Okay.
I like yours a lot, Vicky.
Well, let's have Amber use. So Amber's going to start with your story in the 2 to 3 minutes of the frame point of low point, and it can be a client's low point. Probably will be, okay, in your example, a client's low point, a turning point of what they've done differently, and now what's their high point. They feel comfortable that they can handle this on their own, like that kind of thing. Vicky's going to focus on audience interaction, and Vicky's going to give instruction on the breakout group. So
Okay.
Amber's going to do the story and the 3-point framework, and the bites, bruises, burns is great. And Vicky's going to focus on audience interaction, and then giving instructions and asking if we have questions on the instructions.
Okay, so Amber, let's do that again. Amber is doing the low point, high point, or turning point, high point.
Her 2 to 3 minute client story. That's low point, turning point, high point.
Okay.
And just basically introducing the 3 points of the bites, bruises, burns. And today we're going to talk about one of them.
Okay.
Then Vicky's going to get audience interaction. And Vicky, you're going to say, we're going to break into pairs. And honestly, Vicky, this is really similar to your lifestyle pairing as well. They're going to share stories with each other. So Amber and Vicky, what will be your instructions to the pairs? What are they trying to suss out from this? So Vicky, how would you say that to the audience?
Let's see. Yes, I'm thinking if you're going to get into pairs, let's see, get into pairs. And so I think we need a time frame. Let's take 10 minutes. So each of you get to talk for 5 minutes. And share with each other about the time. Let's see, which one are you going to focus? Well, whatever one Amber says we're going to focus on.
Yeah, sounds good. So is your point, hey, in the past, you're going to share when this happened to you or your family?
Yes, and what did you do about it? And
awesome. Yeah. What emotions came up for you? What did you do about it? And now, knowing that you can take care of this kind of thing you're on your own with your own, what's in your household or what's at the corner store, what will you do differently? That kind of thing. And how will that be better for your family? How will that affect your family? What emotional change, what will change emotionally? What will change financially?
Great. Yeah, that's a really great framework. So I can see somebody saying, my son fell and hit his head and had a thing this big on his forehead, and I didn't know what to do, and I panicked.
Yeah.
But now, based on what I learned, I can, hopefully after the initial shock of seeing his distorted face, now I know to go get this and that and the other thing out of my cupboard in the kitchen and deal with it this way.
Yeah. And Amanda and I fully realize this is not a lot of time to get ready for this and do this right now. And that's actually the point. The point is, this is not supposed to be perfect. We just want to do our best and just jump into it. And when you compare this to when you do have time to prepare, it's going to feel like, oh, wow, I jumped in when we did the facilitator training. So now it's going to be easy. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So we're pushing the boundaries of comfort here, and that's the intent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So my question is the timing going to be about the same? So 2 minutes for my story, and then, the 3 points. I'm not going to spend 8 to 10 minutes on that. How much should I spend on talking about the 3 options? Just, here's, some things we could talk about, and we're just going to pick one today.
Yeah. I would say a 2 minute.
The challenge for me. is going to be, making it more than 30 seconds.
Right. I would say 2 minutes for a story or the client story and 2 minutes for the teaching. So you're going to say, here's a 3-point framework, 1, 2, 3. And right now I'm going to teach you about this one and take 2 minutes to teach it. And it's going to be like really, really simple, really small, direct instruction. For bruises, this is what you're going to do. If you don't have this in your home, go ahead and you're going to get this and stock this. So the next time this happens, then you have this ready for you. And then Vicky's going to explain, now break into groups, tell your partner a story of when something similar happened in the past. How did you handle it? And if you had this thing in your cabinet, how would that experience have changed for you? Something like that. So back to your question, Amber, of how much time. 2 minutes for the story and 2 minutes for the teaching. And then you'll trade off with Vicky, and she'll take, I would say, total of another 3 to 4 minutes to do audience interaction, instructions, and ask us if we have questions. So that's a total of about 7 or 8 minutes total for this.
Okay.
So 4 minutes for you, 4 minutes for Vicky.
Okay, got it. 2 and 2.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm going to bring us back together now.
Jeff, thanks for modeling for us how to do this.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
You told us what to say. Now we may still stumble as we practice saying it, but it's all good.
Yeah, that's the kind of the point of this, honestly. And I also want to say that all of you have individual coaching sessions with me and Amanda. So if you want to dig into this for a whole hour and really break all this out and talk about, we could have 3 different talks and what points you would use for those talks. So definitely, obviously we only have so much time here today, and utilize those coaching sessions if you want. Yeah. So it looks
Thanks.
like, yeah, you're welcome. Looks like we'll be back together in 5 seconds here. Open, how do I do this here? Close all rooms, open all rooms. There we go. All right.
Cynthia's still there.
Yeah. I'm not an expert with the breakout rooms yet, so I'm glad we're all back together now. It's like
You did great. Every last second, because
yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
So who wants to go first? Is your group, Amanda, or should we go?
You guys should go.
Awesome. All right. So I'll go ahead and each group will have 8 minutes total, and I'll give a 4-minute warning like halfway through, and then 2 minutes left warning.
Cool. And I'm sorry, I missed that for a second, Jeff. I've chatted to my group. How many minutes do we have total?
We have 8 minutes total for each group.
Okay, great.
So I'll give a halfway warning and then a 2 minutes left warning. Okay?
Okay.
All right, Miss Amber, when you're ready.
Okay. So I'm going to start off with a story. Many years ago, I had packed my 2 young kids into the car, and we were doing one of those great summertime cross-country road trips. We would drive for days to go visit family. It was the height of summer, and we had finally arrived, and going out to the lake to spend some time on boats and enjoy the water and, classic summertime fun. And we parked the car after we got there at the lake and opened the door. And before we could even get out of the car, my 4-year-old started screaming this horrible, high-pitched, no doubt about it, this is not like, a faking you out for candy kind of scream. Something's wrong. So I ran back there, got him out of his booster seat. He's still screaming. And He's grabbing at his underarm. I pulled his shirt off, and he's got this huge hornet attached to his underarm. I'd never seen anything so big. So, I kind of felt like screaming too. And I hit the thing a couple of times. It did not let go. Finally, my mom, who was there in the car with us, grabbed it with her hands and pulled off this giant hornet and threw it over into the woods. It was quite traumatic for everybody. The 4-year-old's still screaming. Luckily, we're in my car where I always keep my homeopathic remedy kit. And I was able to pull that out, find the right homeopathic remedy, which is homeopathic Apis. You want to remember this one, APIS. It's made from bee venom, and it's fantastic help for stings. Quickly opened up my bottle, popped one of those little tiny sugar pellets out, put it in my screaming 4-year-old's already open mouth. So that was easy, at least. And within 10 seconds, he stopped screaming. We put his shirt back on. We packed the remedy back away, and we were able to go out and get on the boat. That was the end of the crisis. Now, the story lives on in legend, mostly about the hornet. But for me, the really important thing was that didn't ruin the day. We didn't have to go to urgent care to figure out, what to do about this. We didn't have to deal even with a crying, suffering child. We were able to go out and have fun. And all because I had my homeopathic remedy in the car with us on vacation, which is what I would always recommend that you do too. So today I want to talk about homeopathic remedies to take with you on vacation. So there are remedies to cover sprains and stinging, but I just want to really focus today on remedies for stings, because as my story told you, this happened, and it can really be painful and disruptive, and it doesn't have to be. Instead, you can keep just a couple of homeopathic remedies with you in your car when you go on vacation, or in your purse if you're walking around, your backpack if you're going to be hiking, okay? And so I want to talk to you first about when to use homeopathic Apis. Apis is useful whenever you have a situation where there is stinging pain, and it can be quite intense stinging pain, or it can be more subtle. The important thing is there is the quality.
That's the 4-minute warning.
Is that 4 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
And Vicki, do you pick up with the activity?
I didn't mean to interrupt you right there. All right. Amber, thanks so much for that awesome instruction. And now, for all of you here in the audience, let's really dig all the great morsels out of that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to get into pairs. Let's take 10 minutes. So the person with the longest hair goes first, and you get 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, you'll switch, and then your partner gets to go. So what we're going to share today is a time when you perhaps had a vacation ruined by stings or bites. And what did you do about it back then? What emotions did you have? Did you end up in the emergency room? Just tell your partner the story. And then from what you learned today, what will you do about it next time? Because now you will have Apis in your car, in your emergency kit. So from now on, what will you do about it, and how will this help you? Think about it. How will it help you financially, emotionally? What will it do for the quality of your vacation? So then we'll come back together after 10 minutes. Are there any questions? Yes, Amanda.
What if I don't have a story of a time that a sting ruined my vacation?
Well, it's that if you have the longest hair, perhaps you could default to your partner.
Oh, can I tell a story of just when it ruined my day? I wasn't on vacation.
Oh, absolutely. It doesn't have to be just vacation, just any time you've experienced a bite, maybe even a spider bite that scared you or something. And any kind of bite or sting, doesn't have to be vacation.
Cool.
So Cynthia or Linda, do you have a question about the activity?
Okay, let's break up into groups then. See you in 10 minutes.
Okay.
Woo!
Awesome. Woo, yeah. Nice.
Great story, great instructions, really nice. Excellent.
Awesome. Okay.
Okay.
And again, Amanda and I write down feedback, and we're happy to give you feedback after the call, or, a little bit after. If you want to stay after, we're happy to do that. And so for time, we'll move on to the second group.
Yeah, really well done, both of you. All right, Cynthia and Linda, you're up. Linda, oh, there she is.
Coming. Trying very hard to find a video. Yeah, I'm here. Okay. Forgive me, I thought I was getting to a quiet street and I got to one of the noisiest ones, so I'm quickly turning corners here. Okay. So today's event, we're going to be talking about really honing in on what you do and don't want. And sometimes we get to that point where we think about so much of, it's like, I don't know what I want. Has anybody ever felt like, I don't know what I want? Well, today's event or today's activity is about how to help you identify what you do want by helping you recognize what you don't want. And for me, I have sometimes, believe it or not, I struggle going to networking groups. And believe it or not, I'm really an introvert, even though I act like an extrovert. So for me to go to networking events where I don't know anyone, it would be really easy for me to step in the back corner and be a wallflower. And I have really recognized that if I want to get where I want to be in business, or even just a one-on-one meeting with someone, my strategy is to figure out what I want from that meeting with someone. That's my personal strategy. What do I want? And it may not be, I want their business. It may be, I want to learn something about this person so I can help them. It might be, when I leave this networking group, I want 3 names of people that I want to meet with afterwards. It can be something as simple as that. And I came to that because I don't want to walk in there and feel like all I'm doing is focusing on business and what can you do for me? Because I get those people and I feel like I've been slimed. And so today's activity, we're going to work on that. And Cynthia's going to step in and talk you through those steps. Cynthia?
Great. Well, thank you, Linda. First of all, has anyone here ever felt, Linda used this incredible word like slimed, but anyone ever felt uncomfortable or uneasy or nervous being in networking situations?
Yeah.
Yes, and I can certainly relate to that. Has anyone ever felt themselves getting really judgmental or like they've been judged when they've been in networking? Yeah. And then my last question for you is, has anyone like me ever avoided getting together with one-on-one with people or going to networking events because they don't want to feel that way? Great. That is all perfect, because what judgment does and nervousness and all those less desirable feelings that we all get, whether we're checking email or we're networking, is really a wonderful riverbank for us, pushing us into, man, what is it that I truly want to feel? And what I truly want to feel actually has very little to do with our external circumstances. So we're first going to help you identify what is it that you don't like feeling when you're in networking situations or meeting one-on-one. So we can use that gift, that polarity, to push us into what is it I really want to feel, and then how can I be empowered in this? So I would like you first, before we break into partners, just get a picture, a snapshot in your head of either a networking situation or a one-on-one situation that makes you feel slimed, uncomfortable, judged, that you don't want to do. And when you find that picture in your head, just raise your hand. Beautiful. Now I'm going to use Vicky's modeling. I love what she did. I'm going to have you get into pairs, and I'm going to first identify that the long-haired person is going to go first. So if you can get into pairs, and then I'll give you instructions from there. We're now going to give you a section of time. If you're the first person, you're going to share what is it that you don't like for 2 minutes, and your partner's just going to share with you. Then we're going to move into a section where we're going to allow your dislike to push you into, man, what is it I truly want to feel? And we'll talk you through that process. And then last, when we get together today, we're going to talk about how knowing what we truly want to feel in this situation is going to help us actually lead and create the situations that we're looking for most. So knowing that you're going to be led through this whole process, does anyone have any questions that we can answer for you before we begin? Yes, Jeff.
It's probably because I can't see the whiteboard right now, but what were the 3 steps that we're going to share with each other when we get in pairs?
The first step you're going to do is, first person is for 2 minutes sharing a situation that in networking that makes you feel uncomfortable, or what other feelings does arrive in you physically.
So an uncomfortable situation.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the second step is, with your partner's support, you're going to use those dislikes to actually find the opposite. So an example is, man, when I go into a networking group, I feel ignored and unimportant. So what's the opposite of feeling ignored and unimportant?
Great example. Thank you.
And that's going to be your gold. That's going to be our third step of how we actually create situations for ourselves that give us our core desired feelings.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you for that. Are there any other questions or clarifications?
I guess I'll ask one. So am I sharing situations that make me feel uncomfortable, or am I sharing feelings I don't want to have at a networking group or a certain situation?
That's a really wonderful question. Let's first start with what's the situation, and then what do you feel, either physically in your body, it makes me feel hot, it makes me feel empty, or the emotion of it. I feel purposeless and bored. And so we'll start first with the situation, then go to the feeling or the emotion of it.
Gotcha.
Nice. Awesome.
All right.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, nice.
Thank you. Yes.
Good. So that's our time today. I want to honor everyone's time. If you need to go, like Amber texted me, chatted with me and said she had to go for a client. Otherwise, I'm happy to stay for another 5 or 10 minutes and offer particular feedback. So if you want to stay to get feedback right now, I welcome that. I can stay. I'm not sure if Amanda can.
Yep. I can.
Otherwise, it's fantastic to see you, and we will see you next time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you.
I need to go, but I would certainly love feedback, whether it's an email or checking up with people later. That would be very helpful.
Awesome. And I really want to answer your question that you asked too, Cynthia. So I'd love to, let me think about how to answer that, maybe an email, and I might even share it to the group, since I'd love everybody to get the answer too.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Nice.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Great to see you.
I'm still here.
Awesome.
And I know I was horribly distracted trying to find places, but I would be definitely open to feedback.
Cool. Cool. And Vicki, you have a few minutes as well?
Yeah, I have about 5 minutes. I'd like some quick feedback too.
Okay, great. Let's jump into some feedback for Vicki too. Overall, Vicki, I just want to say super clear. I felt really like I knew what I was about to do, and your voice is coming across really strong. So those are all things I immediately think. I'm trying to think of any, suggestions, but.
Yeah. So I echo those things, Vicki. And then Amber changed the contents a little bit. Let me mute Linda here. There we go. Amber changed the content kind of at the last second, and Vicki, you've rolled with that very well, and utilized that and picked that up right where Amber left off. So Vicki, that was great.
Thank you.
You had about 1 more minute, and so there could have been some more audience interaction. And I think that's the point of this, is that we're gonna feel uncomfortable. And we're kind of forcing you into a situation, especially what Amber did to you, which was change the topic. So you were thinking about that too, I'm sure. Okay, how do I pick on this? If anything, we definitely want to ask oh wow, who has had a situation like that, or just those kind of go-tos where we raise our hand, and then who has had that kind of situation? So the audience interaction piece, you had a little bit more time you could have utilized for that.
Great.
Or even things like, I noticed everyone's face scrunch up when she told that story about how the hornet was stuck in there. I was like, oh, even doing something like that, where you're connecting with the audience and I saw you all do this, and and I'm not even saying words, but everyone gets it, and it's visceral, and it creates a bit of an emotional roller coaster, like that. So especially with a story like Amber gave, you can do a lot of just you can move your body and make motions, and that really it's funny and interactive, and it brings the audience in. So
thanks. That's great insight. Great insight. Thank you.
Yeah. Otherwise phenomenal though. Yeah, go ahead, Linda.
I really appreciate that you were kind of pinned in a corner when it was handed off to you, that you had to go from kind of a teaching scenario to an interaction scenario, and you figured that out. And I could tell it was kind of that you were throwing a curveball. I didn't know what it was, but to me, you handled that shift really well.
Thank you. Thanks. Jeff, I think that I appreciate that a lot, Linda, and I think comments like Jeff's would have made a smoother transition there. So, but thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And you handled Amanda's question really well. Amanda and I intended for this to be imperfect and to have clarifying questions. Even on Wednesday, I still have the audience ask me questions. And even with, so if I just jump to Linda, right, with you and Cynthia, there was clarifying questions, and that's not a bad thing. That's fine. You're gonna get questions every single time of, oh, how do I handle this? And using examples from your life, which you and Cynthia did, were what I would go to as well. Instead of just trying to explain the same thing again, it was great how you two used example and story to illuminate that.
Yeah. And Linda, I'd like to just say you did a fabulous job. I think it feels like your day maybe is a little distracted and a little discombobulated, but wow, you hit it out of the ballpark on the fly as you're walking, and that was fabulous.
What you guys didn't know is there was the biggest, meanest looking dog across the street from me that was not on a chain that was looking at me.
Wow, under the gun even.
Yes, I'm glad it wasn't a hornet in your armpit.
I was thinking, well, I'll have a video of it being attacked.
You'll have evidence.
Oh my God.
Witnesses. Well, just so you know, we can't hear any of the background noise. Your earbuds are taking care of that. So
really? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. I need to dash now.
Yeah.
Could I have transitioned or done something different in the order that I did? Because I know I was really discombobulated. So could I have handled that better?
The thing, since you were telling the story, the thing that I was waiting for a little bit was a personal story. Like you, I know you weren't here for the beginning when we really talked about that high point, low point again. But you told about the general times of when you're in a networking group and you feel slimed, when I felt slimed in the past. It was great, and clearly, as Vicki said, it was very relatable. Like, we all got that. So I think the edge for you, Linda, is to pick a time, like a moment in time, one time that it happened, and tell that story, because that will hook us in, that this isn't just a general concept. This is happening. It's real. It makes an impression. It's not okay. All those things.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, I kind of realized after I got done that it was like, well, I kind of just was really general, but I didn't say like the win afterwards. Like, you know, what it's done for me.
Right. Yeah, and that was going to be my feedback as well. Is you just missed the first hour, and we talked quite a bit about that during that time. So yeah, that was just the framework we had discussed. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But all right. Your energy's up, and you're, clearly setting the tone, and you're sharing. So, like Vicki said, like it comes across very positive and high energy.
That's because I was about to run.
It was fight or flight time.
It was fight or flight.
Pretend there's a dog chasing you every time.
You're right. There's a big old bull mastiff staring you down.
Well, and Linda, I want to say just the fact that you showed up halfway through shows dedication and courage, and the courageousness that you did to jump into this activity and not have the warm up that we all had. Like, that takes a lot of guts. So I definitely see that.
Well, I apologize. My days are so screwed up right now that I didn't even know what day it was. And when Amanda asked it, it's like, wait, what? Wait.
Yeah.
What is today?
Yeah. So, well, thank you for jumping on. That was great.
I probably could have snuck out earlier had I had my days straight. So I apologize.
Yeah, awesome.
Cool.
So, all right. Well, thank you guys for hanging around for me. I really appreciate it. Here, I'm waving off to the side like you can see me.
There you go.
We've missed you I've missed you this week, Linda. So yeah.
It's been weird.
It's been weird. Yeah.
It's been weird.
I bet. Well, it's awesome to see you, Linda. Yeah.
It's nice to have some sanity. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome.
All right, guys, I gotta get going.
Okay.
Bye.
See ya. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.